I was very happy that the Architecture League contacted me a while ago to talk about recent work. So I actually even came up with a title, which is Smallness. However, before I start on the recent work and smallness, I thought it's necessary to touch upon the not so recent work, so that you can see the progress, or possibly change from the not so recent to the recent. So the slide you are looking at is the World Expo 2010, and we did one of the pavilions. I hope that this particular project actually concluded the not so recent work. It was all about making fireworks, although we didn't get to make as much. And however, I was willingly participated in that effort. So somehow, because of all these fireworks or firecrackers, I started to reflect upon a number of things that has resulted in talking about something else and produced some hopefully slightly different work. So that something else is smallness. As you can see, it's not so small when you have 3 times of it, but you will see. So the first smallness is rather literal. So I don't know if you can tell how big that is. It's a ring. So we started about 3 years ago to design products, including jewelry. So jewelry is something that is very close to your body. It's attached to it. I'm not showing everything because I don't think it's very interesting. But we also design clothes. I'm not wearing any, but we do design clothes and other things. So anyway, so you can see the smallest thing we have done so far is something like this. The theme, as you can see, is very architectural. This is the section of a room, but also it's a stage for Peking opera, and so on. And then here is Peking opera meets Cafe Mueller, as if you are a dance fan, so you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, and also this is a thing you put in your hair to hold the hair and so on. So from there, and let's have something that would put these jewelry and maybe these smallness in context. So the first smallness is really about making something not only just close to your body, but close to everyday life. So this picture, which I really love, is taken by a friend of mine who's a photographer and architect from Portugal, and which captures a particular lifestyle which I grew up with. But what's interesting is that if you look at everything, I just couldn't help but wonder, who designed the bird cage? And, it can go on in these, clothes racks, and then the teacup, and ice tray, so on and so forth. All these things. And of course, clothing, the architecture, the space, they were all probably designed, not in a contemporary sense sometimes, but to put together a lifestyle that was very important for generations of people in Beijing. So how do we as architects can contribute to that in a more direct way. So in our case, we were pretty lucky to have the opportunity to work on product design. So I just like to show you quickly two products we have designed. This is our inspirations, not our design. God designed what you are seeing, and it's in Chinese. It's called hulu, and it's called gourd in English. And so when I was a lot younger, so this is a common thing. So basically, you harvest the hulu, and then you cut it, you clear the inside, and then it becomes utensils. Essentially, it's waterproof. You can scoop from water to rice to use it to keep fruit, whatever, in there. So I was inspired by that, and wondered if that kind of a pre-industrial design and could be have another life. So what we did is to use computer conceptually slice ceramic hulus so that it can open up, becomes plates and bowls. So that's an idea. It's very straightforward. So we were just taking the idea rather from the nature, and then it makes a tablescape as such. And then after the bigger hulus, and we did the baby hulus, so it started to be a family. And then these china wares in use. And when you eat, you drink, and there's a decanter, and we have all sorts of things made. And this is for olive oil and vinegar. So it's a happy pair of kind of a rounded gourds. And then now something bigger. It's furniture. It's made of an American product. It's the Formica artificial stone. The brand name is called Surreal. It's used for a kitchen counter. You'll probably have it at home. So I was holding a piece of it and noticed it's about 4 millimeter thick. There is a potential to make it translucent. So we try to carve it. It does seem that way, as you see here. And then we use CNC router to really make a screen that is using one material both for the structure of it and also for the translucency. It used to be traditionally the job of two materials, wood frame and rice paper. But now with the new material and technology, we were able to combine the two needs in one material. And so you can see it's 4 centimeters on one side, and then 4 millimeters on the other side. So you see a gradation, a change of the translucency from one end to the other. And I go quickly. I don't have much time, but I wanted to give you an idea of the range of things. Thicker and the thinner end. And then the really the quality of the material started to really resemble the rice paper, which pretty much is something is out of luck. We really didn't know until it happened. So houses, we have done houses. Houses have really become a way for us to really tackle this notion how people live or how we want to live. And our generation, maybe younger generation. So one thing is that when we live in the city, because of the air, because of high-rise buildings, because of other conditions we have in the city, so we no longer have the opportunities to enjoy outdoor spaces. And for this particular project in Shanghai, so what we set up really as the idea, the main idea is to develop a whole series of small spaces that people really can use, can occupy. So it's on the waterfront, and then here it's a very shallow courtyard, having again this lattice work on the outside, as you can see. So it's rather defined, and you can see through it, of course. And then here is a fairly open waterfront. And here is how this kind of openness of the architecture, or rather, if we could just say you can see this kind of modernism, modernist architecture being combined with a more traditional approach. However, to really get the space from interior to exterior very open. And semi-outdoor and indoor spaces, people could have a table and have tea, and could have a chair and read a book, and so on. But it's not indoor space, so that people have the opportunity to come out. And then other courtyards, and some are quite small, and they are shaded because it's in the southern part of China, but yet is good for ventilation. It offers also sceneries. So here again, from inside, you can see the outdoor courtyard almost becomes a kind of a Chinese landscape squirrel. So that's the first smallness. The whole idea is that we like to think, number one, of course, is how our design would directly participate in the betterment of everyday life. The second point is something very important you'll see in the following project, is to design maybe a not so small building from something very small. So I like to try one of these days, if the occasion rises, and it makes sense, of course, is really design a building from a doorknob. But the whole idea, of course, here you can see from jewelry to pots and pans, and to furniture, to interior, and to building. Because that way of thinking, you never really lose the connection with the everyday life. So the second thing, from this image, you'll probably get an idea. I'm also, in recent years, really coming back to the core issues of architecture. There are very many important big issues. Sustainability for one, urbanism for another, and there are social issues. Architecture and our architects could help, and I'll be very happy to be part of it. But somehow I think it's also very important to come back to some of the core issues of architecture to really understand, what I have been trying to comprehend, understand, and practice as architecture. So there are two issues for the second smallness. They're not small at all, but for me, they're just more close to the foundations of architecture. One is history. So you can see this slide. The other one is material. Very essential concerns. So this is, of course, the Forbidden City, the biggest, or shall we say, the Great Hall of Forbidden City. Like we're in the Great Hall of Cooper Union, the same idea. It just looks a little different. And what's interesting is that although for many centuries there were not much communication and exchange between the West and China. However, if you look at a building like this, you can immediately detect a kind of classical spirit in the building. Classical means something actually rather universal, because the value of harmony, balance, the expression of gravity and so on, they are there. And this is, of course, traditional Chinese architecture. And this is, a lot of people probably, saw this building. It's on the Tiananmen Square. Now it's called the, National Museum. And, it's one of the, socialist, realist buildings. We have there, in China and this one in Beijing. The influence, of course, came from Soviet Russia. The architect, was my father. So as you can see, the kind of a Western or European classicism, is present in the way I described, the Forbidden City, Great Hall. And then this is built in 1959, the 10th anniversary of the, communist China. And then this is a building during the Cultural Revolution. And then you see political icons on top of the building. But otherwise, it's still classical in spirit. If you wonder what that is, it was meant to be a torch. But because it's an ideological thing, it had a problem with the direction of it. It was pointed west initially, because the whole idea is that the eastern wind would overwhelm the western wind. And then people started to think that brings too much attention to the west. They turned it around, of course, and then it didn't work and turned out different directions horizontally. And then the only way it would work is let it go up. So this building also was rather the first building ever in China to receive a nickname. This is called Little Red Pepper. I'm sorry that you don't see the color because I couldn't find one with color. So anyway, this is all you know. At the same time, we're doing the socialist realism in the 60s and early part of 70s. And internationally, and especially this project in Shanghai by Le Corbusier a little earlier in the 50s and 60s, was about taking on the local conditions of India. Local conditions meant, just for students, women using buckets on their head, carrying gravels and concrete. Very, very basic, if I may use the word primitive. That's how these buildings were built. There are a lot of photographs you can see. And then the architect, of course, realized concrete could have a very different expression, the roughness of it. It could be a totally different quality concrete may have. The reason I'll show. And then from all these things, I studied first as a student and as a teacher later on. I thought maybe with this museum for the Cultural Revolution, I could combine these qualities because the local construction force is very unskilled. This is in the province of Sichuan. And so I took quite a bit of a risk and to see what kind of a quality of concrete we were able to achieve. So it turned out a bit like this. Very, very rough. I haven't seen Lina Bobardi building in real life yet, but I've seen some Brazilian concrete buildings. So it's actually pretty similar. And of course, the raw power of the concrete, it's being brought out. But also, as a museum, I was hoping that it would get the kind of a feeling people have towards the Cultural Revolution onto the surface of the building. And then the formal language, as you see, it has the kind of a classical spirit of it. So I hope that a piece of architecture like this is informative, so that when people coming to see the content of it and also start to understand a history is being embodied in some way in a building like this. So, and then this is the drawing. It's, as you can see, it's a bridge. So it's a part of the city infrastructure. We did the master plan as well. So you can see, and this is underneath of the bridge. So here actually is the for pedestrian coming or going from both sides of the break of the river, and then that's how you get up to the rooftop. Eventually, it's going to be a sculpture garden there, and then you going over to the other side. So underneath the bridge, very rough structure. But we thought as a museum using this sort of a classical architectural language, so this notion of monumentality is perhaps still there, however subtle. You can see that the interior is in this case is not finished. The exhibition at that point was not yet installed. So this is something we all know, and it has become a very important reference for my work. So this is the Farnsworth House. I was very lucky to meet some folks who actually lived in this house for quite a number of years, and I talked to them and so on. What's interesting about this particular image is the invisibility of glass. It's a material which you almost had to ignore its materiality to understand the power of it. So that's something that's pretty interesting. And then, of course, there are glasses and no glass there. But it seems that, the transparency is so absolute. So the glass is not there. And then, of course, reflectivity is just as important for glass. So we did a installation project for Audi, the German car auto manufacturer. So we decided to play up reflections along with transparency to really to stretch these properties of glass. What we did is, this is really fuzzy. So here, this is the car. So basically, I have all these glass plates organized in such a way that you will see it would give you a result. Just a second, like this. So of course, the idea is not so much about showing off glass, but try to simulate the illusion of movement with a static car. So this motion and static position becomes really the essence of this visual game. so you can see more of it. So that was an installation. So with that, I'd like to come back to Farnsworth's house. So another thing is also interested me for a good many years is the fact this one, as well as the other really famous glass house, the one by Mr. Philip Johnson, they were in open landscape, so that there is no problem with privacy. And then the transparency became absolute again. In this case, it changes the way people would relate themselves from inside to the outside, and so on. So, in other words, the glass house became a building type that is for the landscape rather than for the city. Although, as we all know, in Chicago, there are the lakeshore drives and so on. But the idea, of course, is that if you really truly open not only the house, yourself up, and of course, you probably want to do it here, in the rural landscape of Illinois or the rural landscape of Connecticut. So what would be an urban glass house? I think there are different options. However, in 1992, I think, 91 or 92, 91, I came up with an observation is to really understand the glass house by having it turn 90 degrees. However, now the glass is here, but they have to be floors because if you want to accommodate all the programs. So I drew a little sketch like this, all the glass floors and the roof as well. And then also went back to do more studies. Miss Vanro's glass house, not only that, as we know, had a very thoughtful way to organize the tectonics so that there's no corner issue and so on. So I'm sure everyone here knows all those stories. But what's also is pretty obvious in the plan, these core bathrooms and utility room divides these open space into 4 rooms. They're open rooms, but there are 4 areas. They are connected, but also they are self-defined to the point that it's clear. You can designate a particular function to it. And then when you go to Mr. Johnson's house, the core is placed pretty close to the door. Here, if I remember correctly, it's about 80 centimeters, less than a meter. Here is about 50 centimeters. So it doesn't really divide the space. Although there are different functions. And actually, from what I heard, he used it more as a living room for reception, for party, to really have a full, everyday, routine there. Perhaps, it just, not as suitable, because, these functions, the kitchen, unlike Mi's kitchen, is so much part of the roof. This is more just a pantry, for catering and so on. And anyway, so what's interesting is a possibility for organizing spaces that is totally open, but into such a way that it accommodates different functions. And Johnson's glass house, also super interesting for a different reason, is this. So because maybe the glass house could not be a self-sufficient house altogether. A lot of people here know more about this. This is my trying, doing some detective work. I could have got onto the wrong track altogether. So what's interesting, of course, is the brick house. So the brick house does have 3 windows. 2 of them, they're all in the back. 2 of them, from what I understand, Mr. Johnson didn't really open them much at all. There's one, it was open. So the openness, and that created a more complete scenario for everyday life. I was very much taken by that. This duality, and then started to think about organizing functions, not exactly like Mies, but is using glass somehow, the transparency to organize them vertically so that they are different functions or rooms. And then I had an ideal occupant for the vertical glass house. This is a very well-known drunken poet in Chinese history, and he was also very famous for being naked inside of a house. And people ask him, why don't you wear any clothes at home? And he said something. He's a philosopher, so I wouldn't be able to come up with such a kind of answer. So he said, the sky and the earth, these are my house. And this structure there, this is my clothes. You just came in through my trousers. So this is the only image you could find on the internet of this person. I don't know if it's accurate, but he's half naked and only half naked, and is sleeping outside. And of course, he's very much close to the nature. And then in something closer to us is this Japanese dancer. The group is called Shanghai Chiku. I'm sure they come to New York once in a while. They're amazing. They're unbelievable. So the way they dance, and now of course in the space, made me think that this is rather the more contemporary version of the drunken poet philosopher. His name is Liu Ling. Actually, I forgot to say that. So I started to draw Mr. Liu in form of the dancer in my drawings, having these rather the everyday rituals of doing everything. And then I did more of it. Here is to go from horizontal to vertical, and this daily ritual of talking, eating, or meditating, and so on. So the building started to take form as maybe a house for Liu Ling or for the dancer. So you can imagine a person standing on the ground, not touching the ground, the earth, and then looking up the sky, as Liu Ling probably would think where his architecture would enclose him. So, and then the more architecture drawings, and then you see a section on this side, both sections, the day section, night section, day elevation and night elevation, and plans from the basement. This is a heater, ground floor, having these specific utilities, the living space, and eventually a pure space, perhaps for a spiritual life. And more drawings of that, and all the utilities and equipment we have in the house started to connect into perhaps this machine for a living. And then last year, the house was built in Shanghai. as part of the Shanghai Westbound Biennale. It's now used as a guest house for people, especially artists, architects, visiting Shanghai, participating in different events in Shanghai. So on the outside, as you saw in the drawings, it's like this. And here's the door. It's right on the waterfront. So, and a vertical glass house. So on the outside it is rough textured concrete. So on the inside, during the construction, of course, it's very important. It opens to the sky, popping off. And then when it was finished, I stayed there for 2 nighs with my wife. The house was, if you remember, is for one person. So my wife wanted to come, of course, so she came, and now there's a family with a kid, with a little daughter. They wanted to try this out. And so somehow the capacity of this house is expanding all the time. And so this is a picture I took, when I was, awakened by the, foghorn, on the ships on the river, and then started to see the change of light. And then at night, this is the moon, by the way. It's not a light bulb. So, kind of So now, of course, you started to experience very different, literally, perspectives of the domestic, programs. And I had a dancer who's an architect at the opening of the house, and he were doing again a whole series of different rides, perhaps, and such as sitting on the top floor, like such, bathing, of course, in performance, on the toilet, dressing up and disappearing. And on the other hand, also there's this juxtaposition of different scales and so on, because they're on the different floors. So the size of these and that, they become a very strange collage in a way. So there, this where you get into the house. Pretty obvious. That something wasn't in the original drawing, but it's added to accommodate tatamis and blankets and so on. So you saw that. You saw the spiral staircase, of course. And in the top space. So I think the project, of course, is still pretty far from being a prototype for a house to be populated in any city yet. But what's important for me as an architect is what I said at the beginning of the second smallness. It's really about these thinking, these ideas, and these questions we have in architecture as a discipline that are very, very important to us in some way that only people within this profession, this field, fully understand the power of them and know how to use this body of knowledge and to do things. While we are talking about the big issues, I think that, at least for me, it's very important to always come back to these very basic ideas of architecture. So again, back to the living floor and so on. So the last one is a short one, but it's very important. So does it mean that smallness has to be small? Well, in some way it does, because we can't really do a huge thing and not, relate back to life, to daily life. But however, if we talk about this growth from something small, can we go from something small and gradually to make something big? And we are in the process also trying that. This is Shanghai, and Shanghai is a much nicer city in Beijing. If I could move my office, I'll be in Shanghai. But anyway, try to look for people here. This is right in the heart of Shanghai. And maybe there are a few. Most of these people, they're pushed on the side, but they're riding their mopeds and bicycles. This is a Xuhui. And then, of course, cars, decorative landscape, meaning it's not a park. You have to risk your life to go in there to do your Tai Chi every morning. So, of course, nobody does that. And monster buildings and a lot of cars and so on. So the urban issue is for real. It's a big issue that we encounter, we are confronted on a daily basis. So what can we do? I think we as architects, again, we can't really act alone, but we can start to do a bit of something when the opportunity rises. So the project we did was actually very, very simple. So that's outside of Shanghai, is in this district of Jiading. The average block is that big. It's about 500 meters by 500 meters. We're in New York City. I think, you use the English measurements. So, and a New York block, the standard one is 60 meters by 120. So the smallest one, it will be like 500 by 500. So there are inner streets, like actually, private streets, I'll put it that way. So after a lot of studies, so we decided maybe for Jiading, which is a satellite town outside of Shanghai, the appropriate size of a block should be about 40 by 40. So meters. So that's how big our block is. That's how big a typical block. This is actually not only for Jiading. All over China, you have these huge blocks. Like for Beijing, the starting point will be 600 meters by 600 meters. So that's the reason actually we have traffic congestions all the time. While there are other reasons as well. Too many cars and so on. But that's a reason. So we did further studies about the block. We didn't do anything progressive, I'm afraid. We studied older cities. So periphery block, and also it's very important to have the covered really walkway for each block. And then we run into a problem. The density of certain blocks became higher while we were doing the design. So we decided we do a tier design. 4 small blocks on the bottom with a donut building on top, so that the FAR was able to be higher. And then the program allowed us to have the donut for a hotel. This year, all these buildings will be under construction, and this one is almost completed. So the idea is that this is a much bigger project. So perhaps all the projects I presented previously in combination would be smaller than this one. But the point is still thinking about something small. Literally, it's the size of the block and the size of the street. But conceptually, it's how it's always on the ground, closer to the way people live. I think the smallness project hopefully would extend in such a direction. So in the very end, I just wanted to say that I don't really have a problem with colors, because before that question came up, and I do live in a rather colorful world to some extent. This is our office. I painted all these doors, as you can see, and so on. So color, however, is not yet a project for us. So in all the projects I showed, it didn't factor as much, color, but maybe color is so much of life, so much of nature. I think, we like to take it along, perhaps one of these days, maybe very soon. So that's the end of my presentation today, and thank you very much.